Listen, we absolutely need to talk about the massive, undeniable divide that is literally tearing right through the fandom at this exact moment. The finale is looming over us, and I have to be completely honest with you here. Looking at the state of things, the entire community is split right down the middle. We have invested years of our lives, our emotional energy into these deeply broken, fascinating characters. For 4 seasons, we have watched this meticulously crafted pressure cooker slowly build, and right now, we are at the absolute boiling point. Half of us are clinging to the desperate hope that we're going to get the mind-blowing, perfectly wrapped up conclusion we so deeply deserve. But the other half is absolutely terrified that we are about to witness one of the most heartbreaking television train wrecks in modern history. I want to dive deep into the psychology of these characters, the hidden narrative threads, and the brutal behind-the-scenes realities leading up to this ultimate endgame. Let me explain exactly what we are walking into.
So we're all awake at night wrestling with one massive question, aren't we? Are we getting an epic conclusion, or are we staring down the barrel of another Game of Thrones disaster? After the massive, incredibly vocal backlash to episode 7, I think a lot of us are feeling a very specific kind of dread mixed right in with our excitement. We know exactly what a disaster looks like in a universe this sprawling. It looks like rushed character arcs, abandoned emotional payoffs, and cheap shock value prioritized over genuine earned storytelling. The recent narrative choices have left so many of us terrified that we are heading straight into that exact trap, facing a severely underwhelming finale. It feels eerily similar to that sinking feeling we had right before the final moments of Game of Thrones, where the trust in the overarching vision was fundamentally shaken. But beneath the surface level panic, there are clues. These are narrative anchors hidden right in plain sight that might actually reveal the true master plan.
Which brings us to our first major set of clues, decoding the poster clues and the White House swarm.
To really grasp the scale of the absolute chaos we are hurtling towards, we have to visualize the imagery that was just dropped on us. Picture it, the sky turning completely dark over Washington, D.C., with Homelander and his entire soup army swarming the White House like flies. If you are a longtime reader of the original comic books, this exact scenario should immediately make your jaw drop. For years, the television adaptation has been wildly diverging from the comic book's final arcs, forging its own totally unique path. But suddenly, right here at the absolute finish line, we are being handed a perfect one-to-one visual mirror of the comic's most legendary, chaotic showdown. It paints a picture of unadulterated madness, hundreds of soups descending on the ultimate symbol of the free world. It is the ultimate escalation, setting the stage for a final confrontation that threatens to literally tear the fabric of the country apart.
Now, to truly understand the psychological horror of this White House invasion, let me walk you through exactly how this scenario played out in the original comic storyline, phase by phase. First, we have the creation of the clone. The corporation, terrified of their own incredibly dangerous product, secretly created an exact replica of Homelander, a failsafe capable of stopping him if he ever went totally rogue. That clone was Black Noir. Second, we get the ultimate frame-up. For years, Black Noir committed unspeakable, horrific atrocities while dressed as Homelander. He took photographs. He left evidence. He essentially gaslit the real Homelander into believing he had a split personality, slowly driving him completely, irreversibly insane. And finally, the final kill. In the comics, amidst the smoking rubble of the White House, it isn't Butcher who gets the heroic takedown on Homelander. It is Black Noir. He fulfills his terrifying program purpose, ripping Homelander apart, leaving Butcher to simply step in and finish off the severely weakened clone. It was a dark, twisted, brilliantly anticlimactic payoff.
But I have to pose a really critical thought to all of you right now. Is this all just nostalgia bait? I mean, given the immense criticism that the penultimate episode just received, I literally cannot help but wonder if we are being played. Is this iconic comic book imagery just being dangled in front of us simply to placate an angry fan base? Are they projecting an image of the legendary comic ending to give us a false sense of hope, knowing full well they are gonna pivot at the last second? By heavily implying that we are finally going to get that ultimate bloody White House showdown, they are promising a payoff of monumental proportions. But I am genuinely worried that we are walking right into a massive misdirection, a narrative sleight of hand designed purely for corporate damage control. This brings me to an incredibly frustrating realization regarding the missing heavyweights. Where exactly are Soldier Boy and Ryan? We really have to look at the brutal reality of modern television production here. As we've been told, they simply do not have an Avengers Endgame level budget. I really need you to let that sink in and imagine what an Endgame level battle would actually look like for this universe. You would have Soldier Boy, Ryan, Homelander, Butcher, and dozens of supes all unleashing god-tier destruction across Washington, D.C. Buildings collapsing, lasers leveling entire city blocks. The sheer cost of the CGI required to render that apocalyptic vision might mathematically be impossible for them to actually put on screen, and I truly believe this grim financial reality is exactly why some of the most crucial, overpowered characters are suddenly and incredibly conveniently missing from the finale's main stage.
Because of that, the rumor mill is pointing to a devastating reality. Soldier Boy might be literally benched in a pod for the entire final battle. Think about the profound irony here. He is the ultimate weapon. He was the absolute focal point of an entire season. He was pulled out of the ice for the sole purpose of leveling the playing field. And now the current narrative trajectory suggests he's just going to sleep through the climax of the entire series. Left in a box completely out of commission during the main fight, only to dramatically open his eyes for an end credits cliffhanger? It is infuriating. It completely destroys the narrative momentum. Why reintroduce the ultimate weapon just to sideline him when the world is actually ending?
And that leaves us asking an even darker, more confusing question. Why is Ryan completely missing in action? Let's just dive into the absolute tragedy of Ryan's psyche right now. Just recently, we watched this boy who has been brutally pulled between two vastly different father figures get beaten by Homelander for absolutely no reason. It was traumatic, it was visceral, and psychologically speaking, it should have been the absolute catalyst for his rebellion. It should be the moment he realizes he has to end the cycle of violence once and for all. Yet the narrative seems to be pointing toward him simply dropping his weapons and watching from the sidelines. It makes zero sense for a character harboring power that rivals a literal god to just sit in the corner after suffering that kind of psychological and physical abuse.
If our heavy hitters are truly benched, it leaves our heroes facing an impossible task. Let's look at how to kill a god and the V1 dilemma. The actual mechanics of this final battle are absolutely terrifying. Think of it this way. Butcher is Iron Man and Homelander is Thanos. Because Homelander has now completely saturated his biology with V1, he is no longer just a powerful suit. He is transcended into something untouchable. He's essentially immortal. Meanwhile, Butcher's body is actively failing him. Every single punch he throws, every time he uses his V-enhanced strength, he is actively destroying his own cellular structure. So you have a dying Butcher fighting with all his rage, throwing absolutely everything he has at a god, and only managing to produce a single drop of blood. It is a desperately hopeless scenario. Raw physical strength from Butcher alone is fundamentally incapable of winning this war.
So they are going to need a hyper-specific, highly coordinated cinematic maneuver to even stand a chance here. I believe it happens in a brutal tag team sequence. Step 1. Marie Moreau steps up. She is the only living being with the biological manipulation powers necessary to fundamentally alter the V1 coursing through Homelander's veins. She has to act as the great equalizer, reaching right into his biology to neutralize his immortality and drag him down to a mortal state. Step 2. The exact moment that invulnerability drops, Kimiko enters the fray. Think about the pure feral agony Kimiko is drowning in after Frenchie's tragic death. She isn't fighting for justice anymore. She is fighting for pure, unadulterated vengeance. It will be a desperate, bloody clawing match born out of absolute heartbreak.
But hang on, I want to pause and ask you something much darker. What if death is simply too good for Homelander? I want to introduce you to the ultimate poetic justice. Homelander's entire existence, his entire fragile ego, is built on the delusion that he is a golden god towering above humanity. So what if the endgame isn't a bloody execution at all? What if Maurice's powers are used to completely and permanently drain the V1 from his system? Imagine this terrifying megalomaniac waking up as a frail, normal, pathetic human being. He would age, he would get sick, he would be forced to wait in line at the grocery store, walk among the regular people he violently despised, and suffer in absolute obscurity for the rest of his natural life. For a raging narcissist, living as a nobody is a psychological torture infinitely worse than simply dying in battle.
While everyone is solely focused on Homelander, there is a massive hidden plot thread ticking in the background. Hughie's secret temp V and the ultimate betrayal.
This right here is the most brilliant slow burn tension of the entire series. We all know Hughie still has one unused dose of temp V tucked away. It was never destroyed, and in screenwriting, you never ever leave a loaded gun on the mantle unless you intend to fire it. I am telling you right now that final dose isn't for Homelander, it is for Butcher. Think about the heartbreaking history between these two. Hughie was the innocent kid pulled into this nightmare by Butcher. Butcher became his twisted, toxic father figure. Hughie's entire journey has been a desperate struggle between retaining his humanity and becoming the absolute monster Butcher wants him to be. He is holding on to that vial because deep in his soul, he knows he is the only one who can actually stop his mentor when the time inevitably comes.
To see how this tragic inevitability plays out, we just have to look at the haunting sequence from the source material. First, Butcher goes completely insane. The endless war finally snaps his mind in half. He crosses the moral event horizon, adopting a genocidal ideology that every single person with compound V in their veins needs to be eradicated from the earth. Second, this twisted logic forces him to turn his sights on his own found family. He begins hunting his V-enhanced allies, becoming the exact tyrannical monster he dedicated his entire life to destroying. And finally, the ultimate Shakespearean tragedy. Hughie, powered up by that final secret dose of Temp V, is forced to step up. Hughie has to put the rabid dog down. The emotional devastation of the apprentice being forced to execute the Mad Master is the true beating heart of this entire saga.
To really grasp the gravity of this finale, we have to pull back and look at the bigger picture here. An open-ended universe and life after the boys.
We have to accept the reality that this finale is not a closed door. It is a meticulously designed gateway. Take the Deep, for example. He is officially a solo spin-off survivor. The corporate machine behind this franchise has already confirmed that key characters are going to survive the apocalyptic carnage of this finale to anchor their own dedicated series. This real-world studio economics fundamentally alters the stakes of the story we are watching. You simply cannot burn the entire fictional world to the ground if you literally need to sell advertising space in a spin-off set in that exact same world next year. The writers are forced to leave pieces completely intact on the board. They have to compromise the finality of their own story to feed the ongoing cinematic universe.
I like to call this corporate strategy the Jon Snow, or the Stranger Things treatment. Modern television simply refuses to let highly profitable intellectual property die a definitive death. Jon Snow survives and gets sent to the wall, leaving the door cracked open forever. Major characters in Stranger Things are left in hidden, ambiguous states of existence. The strategy is to give the audience the illusion of a conclusion while intentionally leaving massive, multi-million-dollar narrative threads completely unresolved. It acts as an incredible safety net, allowing streaming platforms to safely revisit the universe 3, 4, or 5 years down the line when they inevitably need a guaranteed subscriber-boosting hit. Make no mistake, the ending we are about to watch is not going to be a period. It is going to be a comma.
Which leaves us with one final, very grave realization to ponder. Is a powerless Homelander truly a profound narrative fate worse than death? Or is it just a clever, heavily calculated corporate excuse? Is it just a way to keep the character legally alive, leaving the door perfectly cracked open so they can bring their most profitable, iconic villain back in 5 years for a highly anticipated, multi-billion-dollar revival? I really want you to sit with that ambiguity. Are we getting a true artistic ending, or are we just watching a meticulously disguised setup for the next decade of franchise expansion? Keep that in mind when the screen finally cuts to black.